And we're live. Hello, citizens, and welcome back to the Comm Relay. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about combined arms in Star Citizen. And I have some knowledgeable guests coming on today who know a lot more about combined arms than I do. Without further ado, if you would like to become a caller on the show while we're streaming, hop in the Armory Discord and hop down into the waiting room channel, and I will pull you in when I'm ready for you. And if you're not going to watch the whole stream, it will be published on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Apple Podcasts sometime in the next 24 hours. Let's move on to our first guest. That'll be WarriorStreak, who is actually already in the room with me. Let's see if we can hear you. You will have to unmute yourself. Can we hear you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We can hear you.
I watched you hit the magic buttons and let me not be a ninja anymore.
Well, that's fair enough. So, Warrior, we've been following each other on X and on Blue Sky for a little bit, so I know who you are. But if you could tell our viewers and listeners who you are and what you do in Star Citizen.
Well, I'm a rather different person than some, but very much the same as many others. So. I play Star Citizen in the full spectrum of it, everything, industrial, combat, all of that, plus the metagame itself. I would have to say that the exciting thing about Star Citizen is everything that you can do in it, just like I do in the real world. My background in the real world, kind of based on this discussion, which you brought me on to discuss, what was it, combined arms specifically.
Yeah.
And I think that was based on a comment you saw me make in Blue Sky and some footage I put in there of our ground teams calling in an airstrike with bombs hitting and stuff like that. And well, I have 30 years of experience in the military, the Army specifically, but I also worked in joint and multinational environments. I started during the Cold War. I did the entirety of the global war on terror, and now we're in Cold War 2.0
well, I have to ask you on that. How was Iraq, and how was West Berlin?
Well, I didn't actually go into West Berlin. I was in the U.S. during the tail end of the Cold War, but there were impacts to training doctrine, supply, budgeting, all that stuff. I'm sure West Berlin is what West Berlin was at that time, and now it's a much better place. But Iraq still sucks. It's dusty. It's cloudy. I'm sure that there are people there who would love to have a better country, but I think some leaders there have to make some other decisions if they're going to do that.
Well, I think that's every country in the world at this point.
Yeah, Iraq is Iraq's own problem at this point. The people have to make decisions in mass with enough mass that they can actively change the direction of what they're doing. So some challenges ahead probably for the next, 50, 60, 100 years across all of those countries at this point. But that's also what happens when, your European groups draw lines in the sand without any regard to sociocultural lines and geography.
Absolutely.
So, that's going to create some problems when somebody else says, "Oh yeah, you guys over here are a country, and you guys over here are a country," and not everybody gets along in those two areas.
Yeah, so, basically, we can blame the British, the French, and the Dutch for most of the world's problems.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that we all have every country has skeletons in their closet, but yeah. So anyway, I guess the big discussion point of, with all that joint military experience in both conventional and special operations units across my career so far in both active duty and reserves, I might know a few things and might have actually been there for some of those combined arms activities to have occurred. So, one of the things we adopted early within our org once we really started rolling, because let's face it, when all you could do at one point in the game was walk around and see your hangars, and there was even a time you couldn't even do that.
Yep.
We're just hitting that breakover point, I think, in 2022, and into 23, where we could start to do those kinds of things. So
yeah, but at some point, like 2021, I think when they put out Hurston, because they put out bunkers at that point, and we started getting some ground vehicles, and suddenly air support started making sense, and you could actually take ground units, place them down, and have them move on their own over a distance. I think that was 21. Someone in the comments can correct us. I don't remember when exactly it was.
I didn't feel comfortable with it until 2022. The stability was still even in 2022 pretty challenging, but it certainly was way better than it had been. Yeah. Once 2022 hit, we really started to start to put together some doctrine, some discussion points, and that's evolving, and it will be, because as they add, the Polaris is coming, and that's going to change naval doctrine considerably. Because you now have a Corvette class ship that's got a lot of insta-death torpedoes all over it, or as we like to say, freedom seeds, that it launches directly into ships that need some freedom. So
I had someone tell me at some point that the Eclipse and the Retaliator are just pizza delivery vehicles. They just deliver extra spicy pepperoni sticks.
I mean, sure. I mean, if you want pepperoni versus freedom, that's fine. We're throwing freedom at people, but that's what we do here. We make freedom. But generally speaking, we try to keep it. We try to blend the best of both real world and in-game mechanics and capabilities and tactics to shape and create the battlefield effects that we want when we're out there doing whatever it is we're doing. Now, sometimes that's very small, and that's when it's not really combined arms. Most orgs in Star Citizen are not doing combined arms. They're doing the equivalent of a small team movement, and for a lot of what they're doing, that's fantastic. Good on them. They're embracing the fullness of what they can do with what they have. And then it goes all the way up to groups like the one that you're in, Atlas Defense Industries, which is, a megalith. The limiting factor right now being you can't put more than 100 people on a server at a time. So even if you wanted a pitched battle of 50 versus 50, that's all you're going to get. That's a platoon size engagement if it was mostly infantry. It gets really hairy after that. With server meshing, if you're not tracking what that means, along with the base building and everything else that was mentioned during CitizenCon, you're probably already too far behind. Exactly. And you need to start moving your butt now, or start, really providing a lot of conversations with the big boys.
Well, I mean, I think with 4.0, we're probably looking at 300-400 players per server, which is a lot.
I think it's more than that.
It might be more. Yeah. Like 300-400 is what we're looking at in the PTU right now.
But the per server doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the reason being is a server doesn't constitute a geospatial area or location. Yeah. It's a bunch of services simultaneously that have to cross. So, and that understanding that very clear difference in terms of the philosophy of how their servers are working also, impacts a lot of things at the strategic level for a lot of organizations as well.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of, being and full disclosure, I was a sawed-off, cynical, dirty EVE online player for a long time. So,
I think a lot of Star Citizen players were exactly that.
I think there was a lot of attraction to what Star Citizen could be versus what EVE can't be. That really, really is what brought us over. But we're also very fully aware of all the other things that can happen from a strategic level and a metagame level. Yep. From manipulating servers to all sorts of stuff down the line. For the purposes of combined arms, we're going to focus. So that's the strategic level of war when we talk about those kinds of things, and then diplomacy, information, military might, and then economic capabilities. That's strategic level. Those are the levers of power you pull. There's some politics involved at that level. But then you have the other levels below that. You've got the operational level and the tactical level. The tactical level is what most groups are doing. Those are the guys who are going out running bunkers, with like their 6 buddies or 4 buddies or 2 buddies in some cases. If they're a little more mature, they might have a dedicated dropship pilot or a Cutlass Steel pilot or something that's out there shooting at stuff from the air while their squad is running around. That's not really combined arms, but it's as close as they're going to get, right? The real combined arms,
they have the spirit. Yeah. It's just they've
got the spirit. Hey, if I could integrate 3 more squads just like them, plus a bomber, now we're talking. Right? Yeah. So when you get to combined arms, you're starting to really look at working together with multiple units in multiple different kinds of capabilities and capacities at the same time and coordinating everything. So it's really a military strategy. It combines different combat arms to create a complementary effect. Your goal is to achieve a much greater massing of fires or a much greater effect than you would with each element separately or in sequence.
Yep.
Right? So what you're looking at is things like, okay, I've got my ground team coming in. They're firing on the enemy with, APCs. They've dismounted. The various squads are now moving from cover to cover as the APCs are giving covering fire. They see a large group of troops plus a tank on the distribution center defending. They call in an A1 bomber to strike that tank or that group of troops or all of it and carpet bomb the area. And they call that in, if they're smart, using a combat map that's pre-marked for something to coordinate those fires so the bomber knows what's what. Because at really high speeds and at really high altitudes, especially when pips stop working functionally, because they do, they better know who's friend or foe. So that's, getting hit with bombs while you're being suppressed by APCs is a really sucky thing to have happen to you, especially if you want to truly live. And with the death of a spaceman, we see that having some impact as well once that goes live. But that's really what combined arms is using multiple capabilities. If they ever bring in artillery, we'll be excited about that.
Yeah, I would like to see artillery in Star Citizen. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, and I actually don't even think their ballistics engine supports it at the moment, because bullet drop is weird right now.
You're launching a bomb. That's all there is to it, man. Yeah. You're just launching a bomb. So you give it if it's a rocket artillery piece, it's going to launch it, and the mechanics are it fires for so long, and then it stops, and then gravity takes over. Yep. That's all artillery or rocket artillery would be.
Well, now tell that to CAG.
Energy weapons have to fire in a straight line. I'm sorry, the curvature of the planet's going to stop you from doing certain things. But hey, it is what it is. And in a world where everything has air capability. There's so much air. I mean, it's the centerpiece of the game for the most part is spaceships that can fly, right? Artillery may be, not as much of a heavy requirement unless there's something that's going to keep you from flying. And that's another aspect of combined arms, actually. Yeah. If you look at from a Navy or an air perspective, the SAMbush, as it's often referred to, is a great combined arms tactic. You have your naval ships or your Air Force ships, however you do it in your org, right? Out there fighting and flying, right? And they bait the enemy into an area where they have a bunch of ballistas or other anti-air capability on the ground, and suddenly they're caught off guard, the bad guys who are chasing them in, and bam, they're getting hit by both stuff on the ground and stuff in space, or in the air, actually, in this case. And it's a really bad day. And we'll see the same thing when it comes to the bigger naval battles once you have, frigates, destroyers, maybe even light carriers in the game. The Idris frigate has a main railgun, and it will fire at extended range and hit things, shaping the battlefield while the javelins are launching their, size 12 freedom seeds?
I think size 12 is on.
Yeah. It's ridiculously large. And, it's designed to really, really send that freedom home. It's going to blow some big stuff up, right?
I mean, that's the same
time, the light carriers are there to project power. And possibly provide the air support that's going to take down enemy fighter bombers or, shoot down torpedoes and so on. And that's combined arms, right? So at the operational level, if you've done it right, you've done your planning ahead of time. Sometimes you don't get to when they attack you and you're not attacking them. Combined arms works. Combined arms can work as part of a battle drill if you've practiced it and rehearsed it a few times, but not always, right? You got to have it there. So that's how we look at combined arms, right?
So I guess that brings me to my first of 3 questions for the show. So what do you think about the current state of combined arms gameplay in Star Citizen?
I think for the right size organization, it's the future. The current state is limited. I don't have anywhere near the capabilities that I have in real life that Star Citizen as a science fiction futuristic game should have. I should have drone support. I should have indirect fire and direct fire capabilities. I should be able to accurately drop bombs. But right now there's a desync issue that makes bombing kind of scary sometimes.
Isn't that like the whole definition of danger close?
Well, yeah, but we want them to hit the targets or at least go near them. And sometimes they're like, not at all. And like, that's not how bombs should work. They should be more dependable, right?
Sounds to me like you need a bigger bomb.
We use the size 10 Freedom Seeds on an A2 plenty often as well. And it only has I think a 250 meter splash damage area. So there's only so much I can do. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm looking at things like, I don't have electronic warfare. There's no jamming capability yet. Hacking 2.0 is got to come to really do it. So in terms of what we got now, it's great. It's like World War II level. We can drop bombs. We can call in a strafing run.
We have better comms outside of the game.
Outside of the game, yes. But actually, believe it or not, our comms and the way we're using them, because of the limited capabilities of what we can bring to bear in terms of the combined arms capability, our comms are no different than guys on a walkie-talkie in World War II. And we had those. We had those comms. At least the Americans did. The ability to do all that is pretty challenging. I think that what orgs that we're because we brought in a couple orgs to work with, and what we found is that the state of the game is great. The meta game, where people understand like how to communicate. We have a lot of people who have diarrhea of the mouth in some cases, and they just want to talk and talk and talk, or they narrate, oh, I'm being hit, I'm shot, oh God, oh man, I'm hurt, I'm down to 33%. It's like, nobody cares, dude. Just say troops in contact, fire, and then just say, Bobby Joe incapped. Yeah. Right. And then, there will be some follow-on comms to get somebody to you, but don't chew up all the comms, right?
Yeah. Brevity is very important.
Brevity is the law, right? I mean, that's where it's at, right? And that's why we use brevity codes, all the same stuff that we used on active duty, as much as possible. We're just, and even within our own house, we've got Xterra Group is probably 80% military or former military. And the 20% that isn't is, they're being brought up to that level very quickly because they're around these people all the time, and they're getting OJT like they never would believe. But even we have to, raise the bar a little bit because we're starting to get more and more complex in our operations. Just recently, we did a flanking move with with mechanized forces onto an objective at the same time that we did an airdrop from the back of a ship. We literally airborne dropped 8 people onto the objective directly, and we were calling in bombs, right? So you've got a lot of stuff going on at the same time. Oh, and the Navy's over our heads, trying to keep our skies clear. Yep. So you're coordinating a lot of moving pieces. We had people in different channels, people raised and lowered on volume levels, depending on where they were on their own. The usual coordinated stuff at the tactical and the operational level to make all those pieces work together. Yep. And I think that even if you have all those capabilities, which we now have the ability to do, I think the meta capability to manage all that is the challenge that most orgs that are of any reasonable size that can do that are experiencing right now. How do I manage all these parts? How do I communicate well? I'm sure some of the larger orgs, which have mountains of people to do that, can do it. We're similar in some respects to Atlas. We have our own, S1, S2, S3, S4 shops. And
Staff shops
S5
are
and
just the
S6.
superior way of doing things. Like,
Well, they can be. They're not the only way, right? So like our industrial stuff is done a slightly different way, but it it works out well, right?
yeah,
And I would wager whoever's in your S2 shop, they either know me or I know them, or we would probably say hi to each other somewhere else down the line, right?
probably.
Yeah. And probably even some of your S3 folks too, and all that. But the real challenge, I think, right now is just communications. Getting
yeah.
that down to a science is really where it's at.
Yeah. And I mean, now is the time to do it. And until now has been the time to do it for the past 2-3 years, because the
Mhm.
game is only going to grow, is only going to get more complex. And the
Right.
sooner you get the basics figured out for your group, the better it's going to be for you in the long run.
Yeah, foundationally, combined arms doesn't work if you don't have your tactical doctrines in place
Yeah.
already, right? And that, from a ground perspective, that comes down to the 4-man fire team.
Yeah.
And then from there, two 4-man fire teams and a squad leader. And then from there, uh, each squad, you have 3 squads and a weapon squad if you're running a platoon. And then you've got 3 platoons if you're running a company, plus the company headquarters section. And then when you get into Navy flights, you have everybody calling themselves a squadron. It's like every time a terrorist group would call themselves a brigade and they had 8 people in it. It was just ridiculous. You're not a squadron. You're barely a flight. Just call yourself what you really are. That way, when you're genuine about that, I think what happens is you start to realize where you can grow and understand how those things work. Because calling yourself a squadron with six ships is not really doing it.
Yeah.
You're missing out on some important steps foundationally before you get there.
So, in the future, as the game develops, do you think combined arms and sort of working together in multiple domains of war is going to become more or less relevant? And I think I already know the answer, but
Yeah, the answer is yeah. I mean, like, look, man, if I can mass fires across multiple levels, across multiple objectives simultaneously in the near and the deep fight, where that's on the ground or in space, I can create what's known as operational paralysis. That operational paralysis happens whenever you basically are fracturing a combat element's, or excuse me, a hostile force, not an element, but a hostile force across the depth and breadth of its capability. So much so that they're so busy reacting that they can't be proactive. So they're no
yeah,
longer dictating the terms of that fight.
yeah. This is bringing me back to old days when I was learning this stuff.
Mm-hmm. So if I can hit your long range capabilities, your C2 nodes, your even your information operations across the board, you're so busy dealing with all of that that my bombers are moving with impunity now because you don't know where to go next.
Yep.
And that's breaking someone's OODA loop. That's you can look at that as the OODA loop. You can look at that as Warden's 5 strategic rings. You can look at that as a combination of the two. You have people who like or dislike either of those two methodologies. I think OODA loop is the primary for most people these days. But generally speaking, there's combined arms, and then you start looking at strategic capabilities across all domains of war. You're going to see a lot of things start to increase. The propaganda levels are going to increase. The information operations are going to increase. The metagame for intelligence and sabotage are going to increase. It's all about it. It's going to happen.
And especially if we're looking at 1.0 with player bases, and because that's going to be usually on a strategic resource, that's going to be something you might want to capture or raid. And then we're also looking at the shield stations and shield tokens in Pyro, which is going to be a pretty big competition for.
I just think that's the dumbest concept I've ever seen. From a physics perspective, thermodynamics says no, right? Like, why would you project shield power as opposed to just mounting it on the planet and letting it be a tactical thing? It's purely an excuse to make people fight, and that is one of the dumbest things you can do, because people will just avoid it, or or they'll just say like, this is dumb, and it basically means that the biggest boys like Atlas and a few others are going to be the only players there, and that's great. Let them go fight each other over in Pyro, but you've got the entire depth and breadth of the rest of the organizations that are out there, and they don't stand a chance. They just don't. Not if there's 500 people on it. Yeah, I know you were. Yeah, I listened to your podcast. Like the depth and breadth of that is so challenging that, if someone can put 500 people down and your entire org is, 30 or 60 people,
you just can't.
You're screwed. Yeah, you're not going to get shielding. No, by the way, you're not going to operate there, or you're going to become what's known as a pet. Yeah, pets have to pay an additional rent to the overlords if they want to be protected, like a mobster. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a couple orgs out there that, oh yeah, the shield contest is about to start. Okay, we're going to put 10 javelins in there with some support.
Well, I mean, like, they may not even need to do that, because there's literally, it's about resources. Because the thing about war is just expensive. It's just a cost. Yep. It's not you only get the advantage of winning a war if you win, and only after all the dust is settled, for the most part, because you can't operate in a war zone still safely while somebody else is still willing to shoot up your stuff. So shield tech, as great as it is, and by the way, shield tech doesn't protect you entirely. It just means that you can't be bombed by an A2 bomber.
Yep.
There are still plenty of asymmetric options on the table.
Yep. And
that's where you may see some of the smaller orgs start to shine. But, if a big enough group comes in and you can find a guy who's got enough charisma to lead a bunch of small groups that still stay small groups, you could have a riot, but small groups are kind of funny like that. They're easy to scatter.
That kind of brings us back to, metagame, and even actually gets us into the realm of psyops, which was my thing, and counterintelligence. And then it becomes way, way more screwed up for everybody. And that's one of the many reasons I don't like the concept of shield projectors. And yeah, I mean, I understand.
I just think that, like, by doing that, you're saying, okay, that's great, but why can't I just build a shield projector on my site where I'm at and pay for that? Use power to do that. Like, you're selling me shield tech. You don't have shield tech in this area because you abandoned it.
Yeah.
So why won't you just sell me shield tech? I can drop down there and just protect my own space.
And I mean, they will let you do that.
There's a giant. No, they won't.
They I think they said at some point that you will be able to, like, build shields for your base. Like,
okay,
build.
Well, if they do that, great. But the only thing they've mentioned is shields will be available for bases, but now they've introduced the shield tech stuff, which is like, okay, great. I could have extra shield tech, but until they confirmly state that you will have a ability to mount a shield system on your, it's going to have a power suck to it. It's going to take up plenty of power, but I don't see a reason why that shouldn't be a capability. It just, projection of shield of energy to create shielding across a star system is such a waste of energy. There is no win there. Like, why would you do that? So it's their way of, like, putting a bunch of crabs together and poking them with sticks, saying, "Go ahead, fight each other."
Well, that's a very CG way of doing things. So
yeah. There's no emergent gameplay with that. There's no innovation. There's nothing there. As opposed to just giving people shield tech and letting them figure out how they're going to hit systems.
Absolutely. So, and that, we already touched on this, but that brings me to my final question, which is, what features or vehicles you're missing that would make the Combined Arms experience better?
Well, some are coming. So believe it or not, like, the base building and stuff like that is really awesome. But if you look at it right, you can also look at it as a combat engineer unit.
Absolutely.
The small, medium, large, maybe not so much the large, because I don't really need something that's going to be in place that long, unless I'm in what we would call, which is not possible right now, a campaign. which would be an extended war. But my ability to build walls, turrets, power them, a forward operating base on the ground in case of a contested air environment, really has some opportunity there, right? Especially in an austere operating environment. But what I would really like to see is drones.
Oh yeah.
I'm
just like, CIG trenches when
extended ranges on the weapon sets to actually match that. I want to see glint go away, but that's a tactical issue.
Yeah. Well, they said it's going away at some point. They said it's going away.
I think it should never have happened then. But hey, because in a world where you have so much air power that if a sniper starts firing, boom, I can call in an airstrike on it.
Yeah.
No problem. At the same time, we don't have death of a spaceman yet, which is, I kind of get that backtrack there, right? As much as it frustrates me to see sniper glint, I think that from a tactical level that it's kind of silly, but they don't have a consequence if you die, really.
Yep.
Except that you have to come back and get your gear, right?
Yep.
But combat engineering is definitely a plus. Drones for reconnaissance. I would like to see a reconnaissance pod. I would love to see electronic warfare of a meaningful status, both in air and space. I think that what else would I like? Artillery, indirect fire artillery. I would love to see some of that. And then I would like to see some things done to allow the metagame of the intelligence gathering be able to be done on the tactical level. Like, we used to be able to see on people's displays what hangar they were going to and what ships they were picking out. Now we don't get to see that anymore. And you can't go into their hangar now anyway, which I also think is sad. But just being able to see that and putting a person on the ground that's kind of hidden or disguised or incognito there, it really does add a development to the game and a reason to put people there that we don't get normally, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, letting people go into other people's hangars, that I am glad they don't allow it, because given how the armistice is set up right now, it would just be a massive dumpster fire immediately. So for now, it makes sense.
Give me those same anti-personnel weapons they're promising for space stations. Just give them to me, man. That at least gives me enough warning that I can go grab my gear from another place and do whatever I need.
Just put a turret right next to the elevator.
I think that if you want to pay for that, you should, right?
Yeah,
right? It just changes. It doesn't stop me from getting into your hangar. It just changes how I have to do it.
Yeah.
Right. If I want to create disruptive effects, right? So, but again, it's don't hate the player, hate the game, right? So
literally in this case,
yeah. I mean, they're going to change how they do things, and we're just going to find a way to do it, because it's not about what's it supposed to do; it's what can I make it do, right?
Eventually, I think the whole hangar armistice thing is going to be changed once they have.
Well, there's no hangar armistice. I can pull out a gun and shoot it.
Yes, but that's kind of like
there's a limiting factor for letting people in, right?
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I think it will change eventually. I don't know what the change is going to look like, especially since hangars are instanced.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of issues there that I see.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if some of the holospheres or other capabilities at the command levels had better icons to tell me what group or unit was there, so I can do the equivalent of air traffic control on a large scale. I think that would be really helpful for C2, especially as larger battles come.
Yeah. Well, I mean, CIG is notoriously bad at UI. But I agree. I would definitely like to see some ability to have a tactical view on a map where I can see, here I have these people, here I have these people. And I think the current star map would support it if it got a little worked over, because right now the zoom levels are really weird.
Yeah, you've either got all the way in your ship or space.
Yeah.
You don't really have anything in between if you're on the planet, really.
Yeah.
I would like it if they actually set up the compasses on the spaceships and your helmets to match, because right now I can't coordinate ground and air using compass headings, which is why we had to build our own combat maps with reference points. And we did very effectively. Like our team did a great job on that. And then maybe a grid system for ground, for any moon, anything else, so that we can start referencing things better and navigating more effectively.
I mean,
that would be
what
awesome.
I would like to see is, as you are in the map, you have the space and you're zooming in, it goes from 3D into 2D, and you can sort of view kind of a bird's eye perspective of the area, and it has some coordinates, a grid system, and you can do more stuff with it. And then maybe, if you want to preview the target location in 3D, you can switch it to 3D. But I think most people would just go, yep, 2D, this is where I am, this is where I need to go, this is where the enemy is. And then you can go off that coordinate system or the grid system and navigate yourself, navigate your other units, and call in air support or anything else.
Yeah, plus the waypoint system needs to be integrated as soon as possible. They've talked about it. They've said you could drop points to see things on a ground location, but it's not really usable right now. It's not effective and it's not consistent.
Yep.
And then you can't do it on the ground. You can do it in a building. And so like we really need it where it will work on the ground consistently or on a spaceship more effectively. Just doesn't. But that's really the biggie short term. I think that logistics capabilities would be really helpful because we don't have a lot of on-ground logistics yet. I think some things are coming. Obviously, the CSV SM supply vehicle is here now. However, I think they missed a really big opportunity to make that a two-seater.
I was looking at that. It is wide enough to make it a two-seater. So,
and I think it should have been able to carry 8 SCU, make it a box truck.
Well, the thing, what I'm thinking is that they are going to put out a Atlas chassis that's going to be 8 SCU plus, and it's going to have that two-seater capability. But we will have to see about that, because when you think about it, if you sort of shorten the cab on it, you can put 8 SCU there, no problem, with the existing wheel layout, and you could probably retain 2 seats. Maybe if you
could totally do 2 seats on the existing CSV SM. You could totally do it and hold an 8 SCU. They just don't want to. I put an 8 SCU in it, watched it do a wheelie. So hey, it doesn't like it. Okay, I get it.
Center of gravity is a thing. Okay,
I get it. Outside, I think if you really want to know like some of the other stuff that I think should happen, I think the Atlas vehicle should get a complete rework. I think there's a lot of wasted space on them.
Oh yeah.
Nobody uses side doors on an armored vehicle except the Russians, and they're death traps if you use them. Instead, remove that bulkhead for the side doors between the passenger area and the back of the Spartan, and add 4 more seats so I can put in a full squad.
Yep.
And or an area where I can mount some heavy weapons for the infantry carriers to carry.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I saw the Spartan first, is that, the side doors, I don't think anybody's ever going to use the side door on it. So, could have just put 2 to 4 more seats in there, no problem.
Yeah, it's such a niche use. I'd like the ladders to work so I can use them to climb up on the top of it and enter into second floors of some place, or on the rooftops of some places. That would be hot. Can you do that? But they just haven't done it yet, right? So, whatever they do with that, that's my opinion. I'm sure there's some developers somewhere who are offended, but and I'm sure there's a reason they want to do it that way that has more to do with, modularity with the other platforms they're building it with.
I think at some point they said that they want to make the ladder functional. I'm not sure if it was a Spectrum comment from someone, or if it was SC Live, where someone said like, yeah, eventually we want that ladder to work. It was just like not incorporated in the original design, so it didn't get done, and then they didn't do it.
Yeah, I can't tell if they're trying to make it like a BTR 82 or a BTR 80, or if they're trying to make it like a Striker or something in between both of them. But the fact is, on a striker, if I go out on the top of that thing, I can enter into a second floor window on a lot of buildings, and that's an SOP, right?
Yeah,
like I can drive up to a building and enter into the second floor with it.
I have seen a striker up close, and it's one tall vehicle.
Yeah, yeah. Carries a lot more people than 8.
Oh yeah,
that way. Yeah.
Oh
so,
yeah.
Outside of that, I mean, like to stay on topic, I think from Combined Arms, like I think I've talked about the short list, things like that. I think a few more. I think the Ironclad coming is going to be great for forced entry insertion.
Yeah.
For larger vehicles. I think that the direction they're going is a good direction. I think there's going to be a lot of tweaks in the next decade to come, but because they're not going to stop making ships.
Oh, no.
They're going to have to like EVE Online's been around for 20 years now, and they're still making new ships. Maybe not as hard and fast as they are right now in Star Citizen, but they are making them. So
I mean, for me, the one big missing thing is that, if you want to bring anything that's larger than an Ursa, you have to bring a C2 or an M2 or an A2, because it's not going to fit in everything. And the Ironclad solves that to a big extent. The Polaris will also fit some of the Atlas chassis vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm missing is something, Connie-sized that can, take on a Atlas chassis. And I
don't think the Connie size will ever do that.
Probably not. Yeah. But I'm hoping for, probably. What was I thinking? Right, sling loading. I would like to see sling loading in Star Citizen. That's
So when the vehicle tractor beams went live, we kind of did that. Yeah, we could do that with a Cyclone on a Cuddy Black for short distances, but it wasn't consistent. I don't know, man.
It kind of worked.
You're kind of taking some risks there, right? I would love to have better airborne operations than our quote unquote modified ATLS chassis with Gravlev technology that we jumped out of the back of ships with, right? Like if I could, and they're talking about something, it's not going to work like a parachute, but it's going to do the same basic effect. Great. But I think that based on what they're building right now, they're already way behind what we're already doing in real life. For capabilities on things like backpacks and armor suits and everything else. And they're also missing the beat by trying to specialize armor suits as opposed to creating modules that you could plug into the suits to give it the certain capability that they want. There's a certain reason you want uniformity with your people, because if somebody looks special, they get shot by a sniper. Or targeted mercilessly. So I would rather have, and it's also a logistics nightmare when I have to buy 6 different armored suits to get my fire teams ready, as opposed to 1.
Yep.
They
talked about suit modularity a couple of years back, and it looks like they're sort of backtracking on it with specializations for armor. We'll see how it turns out. Like that panel was very confusing for me, or not confusing. It was more like I don't know why they're doing this, because this makes no sense.
Well, even their titles for the armor suits. Look, the title's the title, but that they gave it, but that was just temporary. Like the boss suit, which is basically subdued in clothing with a magnetic attachment for a rifle on his back. That's not really a boss. That's your spy in a city, right? That's the spy suit. That's it. That's all that is. The boss is whoever is in charge. Forget giving a label to that. Just give it a capability. And I think that we'll see. I mean, like, they can always change their mind and they can always upgrade later. The problem is like people are buying stuff now based on what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And, you have people who get mad when they wreck their cake.
I mean,
I bought a chocolate cake. Well, sorry, man. We used vanilla. We're changing your chocolate to vanilla now. So enjoy.
That's how it goes with Star Citizen. Everything is subject to change, and never rely on anything being long term. Are you comfy now?
Yeah.
Sorry, my cat hasn't seen me in 3 days, and she's like, "Hello, I would like some attention."
Oh yeah, got to get those pets. Got to get those pets in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like she wasn't allowed in my office for 3 days, so that's just, she's very upset about this because she likes to scratch on my chair, or generally anything that can be scratched will be scratched.
Minefields would be nice if I could get something that'll drop minefields or breaching charges, so that I can breach minefields. It's all rock paper scissors. That's all they're trying to build, right? So give me my rock paper scissors with some depth, so I can make some decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, with that, I think I think we have exhausted all my questions and all there was to say without being here for 3 days.
Great.
I think I'm going to have to do a follow-up episode on this, in a year or two when more features come in and we see how the pyro dynamics work, and see how tactics have evolved and the use of ships has evolved, especially with the Polaris arriving soonish. I think we're going to see a lot of larger scale battles and different applications of the Polaris, because I saw various pictures of people putting in different ships into the Polaris. A very cool one was some 16 Furies in there.
That one maybe has the most actual substance to it, I think. I saw the one with was it 6 or 5 arrows in it?
6 arrows.
That's not actually feasible. Just because I can cram it in doesn't mean I can pull them out fast and under fire, or land them when I got to make an escape.
Yeah.
Right. There's what you can do, and then there's what's reasonable. Right.
Yep.
I could see 2 arrows maybe.
Yep.
I could see maybe 10 Furies, because you still have to have room to work on them. You still have to have room to fix them and reload them and stuff like that.
Yep.
However, the Furies are going to be a little hornet's nest on one of those things at some point. I can see that.
Yeah,
because it'll definitely transport those fighter pilots. But I'd hate to be the engineer who's got to repair them all.
Well, to be fair, every sort of Army, Navy, or Air Force maintenance personnel that I've ever met in my life were pretty much done with existence at any point of the day. So, I think that stands to reason in Star Citizen as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then again, we have magic repair race, so maybe it's not going to be that bad.
Yeah. Once that's done, the only other thing I'd like to see is access controls. At that point, right now, some of the dangers are if I run a 50-person or 50-person party, right? Any one of those party members can get in my hangar while I'm, if one of them's decides to break off and I can't keep track of that, that guy goes in my hangar and steals as much stuff as he can while I'm out. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Just because I want him in party doesn't mean I want him in my hangar.
Yeah. And any of them can invite more people, so they can invite someone from outside.
No, they can't.
Ooh,
Not
they can't
party.
anymore. Nice.
No. Only the party leader can invite.
That was a problem for a very long time, and but I'm glad they fixed it. At least something got fixed with the party system.
Yeah. I see some other issues there, but because I can't form subunits and sub levels of hierarchical command that allows forming a party quickly, it's literally a fiasco every time you want to get 40 or 50 people or 100 people into a party.
Yep.
But that is what it is.
Yeah. Well, maybe they will work on it with the new org and party features coming in 1.0, but we won't know until we know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think really the biggest final thing I want is server stability. Give me that. Give me that. I can take over the galaxy with server stability. No, I mean like really, no kidding. If I put 40 people together and then suddenly your ship explodes for no reason, just sitting in the hangar, or the floor disappears and half your party falls through it, and it already took me 30 minutes to get everything into place for that, and I have to start over. That is a real morale killer for larger or even any moderate sized group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially guys who like, hey, my wife let me play for 3 hours today and they just lost an hour of it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a killer. But once that happens, kind combat teams and combined arms, and then strategic level fights and everything else that goes with it is a lot smoother.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think with that, I'm gonna let you go. And,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hope I will have you on in future episodes. And hope maybe we will get to do something together as orgs in the future.
Oh, Lynn's Nation told me to say hello. By the way, I was hanging out with him yesterday a little bit. So like,
Nice.
and he said, "Oh, you know the Space Coder? Oh yeah, that's so awesome." You know,
Nice.
so.
Yeah. No, we've been friends for a while now, and he's been helping me with the things around the stream and the channel and the armory. So.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, take care. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Hope to see you again on the show, and you have a nice day.
You too.
All right, guys. So that was WarriorStreak with some great knowledge going on in the terms of combined arms and general military strategy, and I am very excited after that conversation. So let's get in Hav0k, and maybe we'll have to entertain ourselves for a little bit. Hav0k, are you here? Because Hav0k had to...
I am here.
Excellent. Yeah, I was... you said you were running around, so I...
Yes, I apologize. A little bit behind.
You're fine. Real life first. I'm just going to get your name on the screen there. There you go. So, Hav0k. It's your second or third time on the show?
Yep, I think second.
Second or third. I'm not sure.
I've lost track.
Yeah, my brain is broken today. Just... all I hear is migraine. All I see is migraine. All I smell is migraine.
I know those two.
So we have already heard your introduction before, but Hav0k. So who are you and what do you do in Star Citizen?
I am Hav0k, and well, I'm a YouTube content creator, but primarily just like to mess around with combat, primarily in Star Citizen. So. Enjoying the Polaris for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm hoping I'm gonna get a little more time on it tomorrow. Maybe even grab some people and take some better pictures of it because I do not trust myself as a commander of one of those, but I definitely want a lot of pictures of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a really sweet ship.
Yeah, I had a run through on the crew quarters, and they look very good. Compared to like the Karak, for example.
Yeah, they're really like well laid out.
Yeah.
I would say just having all the quarters in one general area is kind of nice. But
yeah, I
love the layout.
Yeah, I think CAG are learning a lot about how to lay out ships as they are moving with production, because you look at sort of older vehicles like the Reclaimer or the Starfarer, that the internal layout makes no sense. But then you look at newer releases where, they started learning it with the Karak, because the Karak internal layout is actually pretty good. And now we have the Polaris, which is sort of even larger scale, and it looks really, really, really good as well. So, but I'm hoping to get a little more time on it tonight, maybe in the Arena Commander, and tomorrow in the PU, because I haven't really had a chance to properly explore it. Because I had to look at the Starlancer first. Because I thought maybe I can actually get that done in a reasonable amount of time. And I did, and the Starlancer Max looks really, really good as well. Kind of looking forward to the TAC and the build as well. So
yeah, the most ingenious design I would say would be on the Polaris would be the cargo hold.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, having both sides open up is pretty impressive. Yep. I'm glad that they went that route.
Yep. But like I said, I didn't have a lot of time to look around. They removed the elevator that was planned, right? So there was supposed to be an elevator in there.
Like for the main cargo hold?
Yeah.
There's a couple of elevators, but they're not for cargo specifically. There's like a little tiny one that goes between the torpedo bay and the cargo hold, but that's about it.
Yeah. But I think the ramp design is much better, a little more flexible on the vehicles. I think I saw someone put in a Centurion, which is pretty nice, I think. But in any case, I think the cargo hold is mostly going to be ammo, and a bunch of torpedoes.
Probably.
I mean, it's right next to that torpedo reloading bay. There are some questionable design decisions there where The only way to fire torpedoes is guy in the torpedo bay, who only has a screen and a button, basically. Which, I don't know. I feel like it should be someone on the bridge who can actually like see what is being locked on. But again, early iteration of the ship, so we don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think that eventually that they'll actually have it kind of intertwined so that they can see like who's locking what.
Yeah. So Hav0k.
We'll see.
So what do you think is the current state of combined arms and FPS combat in general in Star Citizen?
So I think honestly, FPS combat is doing really, really well. It's in a really good spot. For all intents and purposes, I'm really happy with the direction that it's going. I'd like it to be a little bit smoother, a little bit less Arma, I guess. I don't know if anybody gets that reference, but some more smoother gameplay and I think with some of the little updates to transitions like crawling up ladders or going prone or even the slide mechanic that would put it in an even better place. But honestly, I think from where we once were, FPS is in a far better state than it ever used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ground vehicles, on the other hand, are another story entirely.
Yeah, CIG never quite figured out how to do tracked vehicles. So the tank, like it's a tank, but it somehow has no traction whatsoever.
Yeah. I have a lot of complaints with the tank, especially being a actual Abrams tanker. I I hate it to my very core.
So you're saying you're gonna play War Thunder with me? I need someone to help me level up.
I will gun my tank, but I don't know if I can bring myself to play War Thunder, to be honest with you.
Weirdly enough, that's been kind of my game to pass the time. I come back to it like every couple months when a major update comes out, and I play it mostly for the vehicles and for the detail they have in it. Other than that, I find the gameplay confusing because it chucks me into EU servers. So I generally get put in with a bunch of people who type in Cyrillic in the chat, which I don't understand. And I appreciate that they're trying to tell me something, but it just, I like, bro, I don't know what you're telling me.
Checks out.
Yeah, so that's been, like, it's fun. I'm having fun with it. I also suffer a lot with War Thunder, but yeah, it's nice vehicles. A couple more months of this and I'm going to get a Bradley finally.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think vehicles are in a really, 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 really terrible spot. As you mentioned, traction for a tank, for example.
But it's generally a systemic issue with the vehicles at the moment.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different things as well that go into the rest of it. Like I want them to focus on like making them beneficial for certain areas, but yeah.
Well, I think kind of vehicle physics has been on the back burner since, well, we had a minor update to vehicle physics last year or 2 years ago, and it made it worse. It kind of fixed the hover vehicles, but it made everything wheeled or tracked a lot worse. And I think CIG kind of realized that, we are actually, like, we might actually have to write a proper driving physics engine into our engine. And I don't think that's a small piece of work. I think it's going to take a long time to get it working in a way that we would expect. Because when you look at it, racing games and such, for them it's easier because they don't really have to handle different gravities and that kind of stuff. For us in Star Citizen, gravity is a thing we have to look into when we manage vehicles and how they behave and how their mass changes in a different gravity on a different surface. And I actually don't think CIG are even tracking sort of surface properties right now for like, this is mud, this is sand, this is, hard rock, gravel, this is ice. So that's another thing you have to add before you start looking into, traction, wheel compression, suspension, that kind of stuff. And it's very exciting for me as a developer. But I would not want to be the guy who's doing that. It's a lot of math, and I don't want to.
Well, and I think it won't be too complicated like that. But I mean, there's a lot more on vehicles that we could really, really get into. So
yeah, I think that might have to be a separate show, kind of doing vehicles and kind of an evolution of vehicles. And you know what? I'm actually gonna like write that down real quick here. Yeah, I have to write this down because I have a list and everything. So because every like Monday, Tuesday, I'm like, so what is the next show gonna be about? And I'm like, oh well, there's my list, but I don't want to talk about that, and don't want to talk about that yet. And like the person I want to come on and talk about this is not available this week. And yeah, that's how people get pestered by me every Tuesday and Wednesday. So yeah, there's a schedule to the madness and to the pestering, for those of you wondering. But yeah, let's move on. So, and obviously I think I know the answer. So in the future, as the Star Citizen game develops, do you think combined arms gameplay will it become more relevant or less relevant?
I think it would become more relevant, and I really hope so, because I think that there needs to be a lot more focus on using all the platforms that they sold, obviously. But I want to see like Centurions and Ballistas actually creating area denial or area of denial, so that we actually have, we can lock down an area if we wanted to from prevent ships from coming in.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you remember, like a year ago, I think, ADI, we were doing a jump down op and we dropped a bunch of ballistas and Centurions all over the place. And while, the missiles were not terribly effective at actually hitting things, it was a very effective deterrent for anybody coming close, because kind of the big hindrance there was that, yes, you have a missile that has a 15-kilometer range, but you just can't see the things you're supposed to be shooting at until they're 5 kilometers or less away from you.
Yeah, I was never there for that. I wish I was.
It was fun. I was a ballista commander on that one. We finally died when we ran out of missiles. Like, I think we were the last people because nobody could pick us up anymore. So we were like, cool, we're gonna go down shooting then. And we got finally taken out by, I think it was a pair of arrows who kind of snuck up on us from behind the hill, and they were too close for me to lock. And well, the driver was busy driving away to shoot because the driver controls the small turret, which I think is not the way to go on this.
Oh, on which one?
So like on the ballista and on the Centurion, you have kind of the big turret with either the missiles or the 4 size 4s, and then you have the small turret which has like a size 3 on it, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and the big one, you obviously have the gunner, but the small one is controlled by the driver, which is not particularly useful because it's supposed to be kind of like the close-in defense when the thing attacking you is too close. But it's kind of useless if you're trying to like move away or maneuver away from the threat, but also like shoot at the threat. It's like on a Centurion, it doesn't matter because the turret can shoot at whatever. On the ballista, it's actually a bit of a problem.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, the thing about like ships and whatnot is they should also, I don't know exactly what the route they should go is, but I would like to see some of the ships, at least, ones that aren't specifically fighters, for example, or like light fighters. I want to see them have like some type of targeting pod or way of targeting ground vehicles in a way, but like also, goes in the realm of how the A1 and A2's bombing HUD or UI or whatever is absolute trash.
Yeah. And I think they, wanted to get bombing in, but couldn't quite figure out how to do the UI for it. Like I tried it a few times, and I guess with practice, you place down the reticle, and then you like move correct. It's still not what you would expect from a guided bomb, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I would maybe like to see sort of have a person who's kind of the bomb targeting person, and they have kind of their own little remote turret, and they're pointing a thing at the target, and based on that thing they're pointing, the bombs are gonna fly. Or maybe soft lamp, guided from the ground, like normal people do.
Well, and we could get into the weeds on that too, but I think the best route is they got to start, rather than like try to reinvent it, just use what other games use. For like example, CCRP, CCIP, those should be used. Like that would be the go-to for me if I was going to create like a UI for dropping bombs in this game specifically.
Yep. What games are that, sir?
Just like DCS and whatnot, but just using CCRP, like computer calculated impact at point, and
right.
Yeah, release point is the other one for the R. So
yeah,
those are super easy to do and super beneficial. Give you almost directly on target.
Yeah, absolutely agree on that. But CIG have a habit of trying to reinvent the wheel for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I don't think they're gonna stop. I think they will just eventually iterate reinventing the wheel until they invent something that is similar to what we actually want. Or we're gonna have to force a bunch of actual bomber pilots to work there and then tell them how to do it.
Yeah, that's possible.
Chat if there are any volunteers. I think there's a bunch of job openings there. A little extra money in the retirement. I'm just saying, it's a valid job opportunity. Become a consultant for CIG. I think they would go for it with a little bit of convincing.
I think that would be a very beneficial thing for them if they had a military consultant in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. WarriorStreak says CIG can't afford you. I don't know. Aren't like military personnel like chronically underpaid?
Generally speaking, yeah, and I think military contractors wouldn't be too expensive to hire, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was private sector, so I can't complain. But yeah, no, I agree. CIG could possibly look into consulting with people on this, because there are people who have the knowledge of how to do this, and CIG don't, or maybe they have and they are not using it the way we would expect them. But I think in this case it would be beneficial for them, as with many other things. Specifically, all of UI in the entire game, because the only good UI in Star Citizen is the start menu.
Yeah, that's true.
and I'm not trying. I'm not throwing shade at CIG for no reason. It's just a valid feedback. It's just the UI is terrible and it's getting worse.
I mean, the new MFDs are a step in the right direction, but they don't do it well, and they're going the wrong direction. Like there are certain upgrades that we need to, or certain features that we need to have inside the HUD to be able to be effective, and the MFDs. But I mean, I kind of like the HUD, but it's broken.
But yeah, the new MFDs are good. Certainly an improvement over the previous iteration. The HUD, I like that you can toggle things on or off, and sort of customize it a little bit to what you need. But it's not quite there to where to what I would want. Like one of the big things, I've been flying my Zeus for a while now in the PTU, and there was no altitude marker.
Nope.
But that's kind of like a pretty important piece of information, I think, that you would want to have.
Yeah, it shows the altitude on the HUD, but it just doesn't show like a ladder.
Yep.
It does not show The biggest thing for me that I have a problem with is when you go into SCM mode and you're attacking a target. For example, if you use missiles, it doesn't give you a distance to target.
Yep.
Almost at all. It doesn't tell you like, and so in DCS you have, when you're engaging another air target, you have like a closure rate, and then you have this like, you know, your max effective range at the top of the ladder for that missile, and your minimum effective range to lock it and actually hit the target. But you have this sweet spot that indicates this is where you want to engage, because you're more likely to hit the target. What I would like to see that in Star Citizen, to show that, like, you know, you can shoot the target and you might hit it, but you can shoot the target in this distance range and you'll highly likely you'll hit the target, essentially.
And WarriorStreak is correct in the chat. There is a reason that data is in the real life HUD, and it is because certain governments have spent billions of dollars figuring out why the data is there.
Hey, they've done all this research before for us. You don't have to worry about it.
Look, I own Lockheed Martin shares. I own Northrop Grumman shares. Invest away. This is all value for me. Yeah, support your military-industrial complex. It really makes the shareholders happy. No, like Raytheon, like when the war in Ukraine started and suddenly everybody needed like sensors for their missiles, Raytheon was like stonks. It was great. Then again, I was busy getting shot at, so I didn't quite get to see the part of the graphs going up. I saw it after, but that was great. But yeah, I fully agree. The real life UI has the information we need, and CAG kind of like they already have the ability for us to customize what we see, but you can't customize this. Like, oh yeah, I want to see altitude on my HUD.
Yeah,
I want to see the ladder. Like I get it. Like the way it was previously with the ladders and the compass, it was very crowded. But you know, let us toggle that. Like I liked it that way. I was getting the information I needed to fly my ship the way I want to fly it.
Well, and certain ships could benefit from having certain type of information shown too. Yep. So, like the Gladius's UI from back in the day was like 2018 or whatever, had a lot more information, but that was specific to its type of ship, which was very beneficial.
Yeah. And so moving on, so and we touched on this already. So what features or vehicles or ships do you think are missing in Star Citizen that would make combined arms operations and the experience better for players?
I don't think it's a missing ship question. I think it's just a missing like feature. There is no purpose right now to use ground vehicles aside from, you know, people using like a hover bike or whatnot just to mess around. But there's really no point in having ground vehicles, and I can't say for sure as far as what feature might be missing to put more emphasis on that. I think that weather might be something that would help push that in the direction, but also you know, jungles might, redwood forests might, where you can have like it's too much tree cover that you can't really, canopy cover that you can't really like get in there. But with a ground vehicle, you can. But I think base building will put a lot more emphasis on what ground vehicles will be used for.
Absolutely. Yeah, they did show off that weather bit where ships were getting struck by lightning. So that would hamper your air support, so you might have to use ground vehicles to get that. But then again, you know, the same weather might be affecting your ground vehicles as well. So it really depends on which way they take it. But I agree. With the amount of air power we have available, sometimes it doesn't make sense to bring out a ground vehicle unless it's for show. Like we did a couple bunker ops where we took tanks to take out the turrets instead of vehicles, and yeah, I mean, that looks cool, but, you know, you could achieve the same effect in a fraction of the time if you just dropped the bomb.
Yeah, well, and that might be something that they'll have to think about as far as like creating shield systems to prevent bombs from just being straight dropped. But I think that, like, honestly, bunkers and distribution centers could really benefit from having vehicles, but you'd have to push people into the direction where they really can't, for example, assault a distribution center with a ship at all. And they have to, I don't know, get people together and get ground vehicles in to take out the targets there. But
well, they did
that would
show
put
off, the point defense cannons on the Polaris and on the Emerald. So that might be a way to sort of prevent people from just bombing the turrets. And that way you kind of have to come in with either a fighter or sort of a other kind of ship that can take it out with guns, or maybe take it out on the ground. So that's one possible way out that I see currently with what we have. But I think that would require a serious rework of how distribution centers are structured. Also, like, those PDCs are tiny. Really, for a distribution center, you're looking for phalanx size of a thing, I think.
Yep.
Where it's like,
and
it will shoot out munitions, it will shoot down planes, it will shoot down really anything that you throw at it.
Yeah, I'd say that it should be pretty effective against small targets like little snub fighters and light fighters, and definitely they should shoot down bombs. That's actually a pretty ingenious thought, is to use those against the bombs that, like, a C2 or A2 or A1 can drop. But really, they just need to create something in order to drive a reason for people to choose the ground vehicles, because right now it's just one size fits all. You just grab a whatever strong fighter, like a Hornet, for example, and you're the best on the battlefield.
So I actually have a bonus question for you today. Since you have revealed that you were a tanker, so what are your thoughts on the Nova and the small tank? What's it called?
The Storm?
Yeah. Well, it's a tank.
It is a tank. It's a very terrible tank. It could be really awesome if they make updates to the track, the physics of the track, and the fact that you don't really have any traction. But also, I'd like to see a bit more emphasis on using a tank in some ways. But the Storm, in my opinion, is absolute trash. Until they give it features to support using a tank, or giving it a good solid reason to use it, then I don't really see a point to it. Like the Storm AA, for example, we tried to use that in trying to take down like a C2, and really the distance and how far you can shoot, that's one of the biggest things for me. Is if you were to set up like a bunch of anti-air, like Ballista, Storm, you can't really hit a target past like 2,000 kilometers. The ship has to be that close in order for you to engage. I want to see like a good 10,000 kilometer freaking standoff range.
Oh yeah, and I think that comes down to missile issues and general sort of radar features, because when you look at it, what's the engagement range on a Patriot? Like the I think it's like
10 mile.
Yeah, something like that. So, and then you have longer range, strategic air defense.
I lied. 99 miles.
Yeah, there you go. So, and then when you think about the S-400 supposedly is like 200 kilometers, supposedly. That's what they tell us, and I don't know.
I mean, the fact that thing can hit 160 kilometers away. Yeah, in Star Citizen, that probably would be pretty ridiculous, obviously, because we can't even see that far. But I'd say a good solid 10 clicks is a good enough range to make missiles effective too, because that way, if it benefits fighters, it benefits big ships, because if somebody turns tail and runs or tries to utilize nav mode to get away and do passing runs, you can just light their asses up with a bunch of missiles and get them to turn around, or put them on the defensive.
Yeah, the missiles and generally radar is one of the things that are on my radar, pun not intended, with Star Citizen. Oh yeah, give me my 160-kilometer freedom seats. Yes, I agree. And Ballista used to be very powerful when it was initially released, because you actually had the radar range to see things 20 kilometers away, and you could actually effectively engage them with the size 5s, which was great. And there wasn't much the target could do about it, because the missiles were so fast. But now missiles are a little bit slower. There's detection ranges under 5 kilometers. So by the time you lock and fire, they are within firing range on you, and they see you as well, because they have the same detection range on you. And that was my big caveat with ground vehicles, which is, yes, you can see things 5 kilometers away, but the things can also see you at 5 kilometers away, which doesn't seem too good if you want to do strategic air defense, or any kind of air defense, really, because you are at a clear disadvantage unless you're in a Centurion, which, if you have a light fighter attacking you, you generally have more firepower than that light fighter.
Oh yeah,
but you have less
Centurion
range.
is pretty beast.
Yeah. But you're gonna have less range because that's a size 4s, so that's 2.5 kilometers of range.
Yeah.
But if the fighter has size 3s, that's 20... I think it's 2 kilometers or 2,300 meters. But they're moving at 200 plus meters per second, which adds them 200 meters of range. So they can shoot at you about at the same time that you can shoot at them. So, and you will have... You having the bigger gun, you will suffer more from weapon spread than they will. So you are at a disadvantage, even in a Centurion, even though it's insanely fun. And you have less shields because you have a size 0 shield and they have a size 1 or 2.
That brings up like a kind of an interesting topic too. Because I was reading somewhere, I forget where it was, but someone was saying, well, literally you could just land anywhere. And then another comment said, well, with them updating Microtech and not having anywhere to land, now what are we going to do? This is bullshit. I'm thinking about it. Okay, now you're going to have a reason to actually use vehicles, because you'll have these little paths that you can drive on a vehicle, but you can't get there on a ship. So people are mad if you add stuff. People are mad if you take stuff away.
I think what they're going to do is, you're going to have the redwood forests on Microtech, and you will have, distribution centers, bases, outposts, that kind of stuff. And that's going to give you a little clearing, and there's going to be a road between them. And now you kind of have a reason to, I'm going to bring my ground vehicle, because no one can attack me because I'm under tree cover. But then they also said, the trees are going to be destructible, so technically you could do the Vietnam thing and just bomb an area of the forest to create a landing zone if you can't find the landing zone.
I suppose that's a fair argument. I think I missed that part, but that's a fair argument. That's right. The comment was, I don't know why they don't have like a system where they can like create felled trees so it looks a little bit more realistic. I'm like, okay, really? You're looking at the progression of the planets and seeing how much work they're putting into it. Now you're complaining.
3 assets, actually, I think. But they kind of
like dead wood and whatnot.
Yeah, they showed off a bunch of stuff, and that's like a initial asset set that's they're going to expand on. But really, I just want my size 9 napalm bomb. That's just the thing that's gonna cure my depression. Just size 9 napalm bomb. Some white phosphorus, maybe. That's Like I said, I like my war crimes. It's called the Geneva Suggestion for a reason. And just like that, we got demonetized. But yeah, though, I think that's a very valid point. Redwoods and jungles and swamps are gonna give us a huge reason to use hovercraft, in my opinion, because you might have trouble driving over it depending on how deep it is. But hover vehicle is not gonna care; it's gonna hover over the water, so not a problem.
Yeah, that's true, and that will be super helpful for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. With that being said, I think we're done. Unless you have any further thoughts.
No, I think I'm solid.
Fine. That's great. I'm gonna go have a nap. Oh, my head hurts. My head hurts so much, and the lights are very bright, and my eyes hurt, and existence is pain.
Indeed.
Yeah. So thank you, Hav0k, for joining us again. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
You need to start a talk show so I can return the favor.
I don't know if I have time, but I will. I'm definitely thinking about that. There's a lot that I want to do, but I just don't have time
really
to
anything
spend
I
time.
can do. I mean, you're the bigger channel here, so really anything I do is gonna have no effect. But anything I can do, I will do, and I'm happy to do. Just really wishing, or willing to help out people with things within the org and without the org. So
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely have wanted to do a talk show for a while, but
It's fun. You get in the you kind of get in the mode for it, and it's really fun. First couple episodes I really was dreading it because I did not like streaming, but now 10+ episodes in, I'm really getting into it, really having fun, trying to develop the show a little bit further as I go. Yeah, 2 hours a week, it's not that bad. Give or take, depending on how many guests and how much editing I do after this. Because I download the episode right after Twitch lets me. I cut off the video, I cut off the intro and the outro. I do a little bit of sound magic, and then I push it to Spotify. So a little bit of extra work, but that usually takes 20 minutes tops.
yeah.
So yeah, we have to do photo shoots. We need more B-roll for this.
Of course.
And now we have the screenshots channel, so now it's actually really beneficial for the org as well.
Well, yeah, if you get people taking actual screenshots of good stuff.
Well, I saw a couple good ones in there.
No, there's a few good ones, and then there's like the bug report screenshots that people are sending.
It's still an in-game screenshot, and that's I appreciate the comedy value in it. Okay, I go there for art and for laughs, and it never fails to satisfy me.
Yeah, no, it definitely is worthy of some laughs for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, in that case, Hav0k, again, thank you very much for coming on the show. I will probably be inviting you at some point in the future again, because this never ends. You are now bound for life.
Yeah, never ends. Appreciate you having me on it.
Obviously, always a good conversation. Thank you. You're free to go. Appreciate you. Have a great day, and I will see you when I see you.
Yep, we'll catch you later.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Comm Relay for this week. Two great guests, WarriorStreak and Hav0k, talking about combined arms in Star Citizen. Great conversation. I learned a lot of things about real life, how it works in real life, and how people think about it in Star Citizen, which has opened me up to some further topics for the show and for the videos in the future. So big thanks to both of the guests today. No callers today, unfortunately, but no worries about that. If you're watching the stream and you would like to be a caller on one of the future episodes, all you have to do is join the Armory Discord server, which is linked in the description. And when it's time for the stream, which I will announce usually a couple days ahead, but usually it's around this time, all you have to do is hop in the waiting room channel, and I will pull you in when I'm ready for you. If you are listening to this, or if you haven't caught the whole show on the stream, this will be uploaded within the next couple hours on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Apple Podcasts as a podcast, so audio only. So you can re-listen or listen to the whole thing after the fact. And yeah, tomorrow a new video comes out. On next Sunday, we're doing Comm Relay. And in the meantime, thank you for watching or listening. Fly safe, and I will see you in the verse. Good night.